The bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought Supremacy was silent except for the soft hum of its engines. Admiral Kexatheta stood before the main viewing screen, his forearms crossed behind his back. His dark purple scales reflected the starlight as he studied the data scrolling past. "Pathetic," he said. The word came out as a low growl through his sharp teeth. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Velnor, stepped forward. "Sir, these humans." Kexatheta waved one clawed hand at the screen. "Look at their ships. Metal boxes with engines strapped to them. No energy shields. No plasma weapons. They still use chemical rockets for small craft deployment." The data from their scouts painted a clear picture. Humanity controlled 23 star systems along the outer rim of the galaxy. Their largest ships were barely a kilometer long. Their weapons were primitive: nuclear warheads, railguns, and simple laser arrays. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel within the last century. "They barely qualify as a Type 1.5 civilization," Velnor observed, reading the same data. "Should we even bother with the full subjugation fleet?" Kexatheta turned to face his subordinate. The admiral stood 3 meters tall, towering over most species in the galaxy. The Zalathi Empire had conquered 47 different species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Each conquest had added to their strength, their technology, their glory. "Protocol is protocol," Kexatheta said. 12 dreadnoughts for first contact subjugation. The Eternal Throne demands consistency." He looked around the bridge at his crew. Zalathi, Morvac, Threnodi, and a dozen other species worked at their stations. All conquered, all now serving the Empire. This was the way of things. The strong ruled. The weak served. "Send the message to the fleet," Kexatheta commanded. "We arrive at the human border in 6 hours." The 12 dreadnoughts of Subjugation Fleet 9 moved through space like predators stalking prey. Each ship was 2 kilometers of dark metal and power. Their energy shields could withstand the explosion of a small star. Their plasma cannons could turn a moon to molten rock. They had never failed to bring a species to its knees. As they crossed into human space, the first human ships appeared on their sensors. 3 vessels, each barely 200 meters long. They looked like metal rectangles with engines attached. No elegant curves. No visible weapon ports. Just flat surfaces and sharp angles. "They're hailing us, Admiral," the communications officer announced. "Put them through." The viewing screen flickered to life. A human appeared, pink skin, no scales, no natural armor. Just soft flesh and cloth covering. The creature looked fragile enough to break with one hand. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Colonial Defense Force. You are entering human space. Please state your intentions." Kexatheta almost laughed. The automatic translator made the human's words understandable. But the absurdity remained. They acted as if they had authority here. "I am Admiral Kexatheta of the Zalathi Empire," he said, letting his full height show in the transmission. "Your species has been selected for incorporation into our empire. You have 1 standard rotation of your planet to surrender unconditionally. Accept vassalage or face annihilation." The human's expression didn't change. No fear, no anger, just a slight frown. "I see," Captain Chen said. "We'll need to consult with our government. May we have 72 hours to provide a formal response?" 72 hours? Kexatheta's scales rippled with amusement. "You think to delay the inevitable?" "We simply wish to follow proper diplomatic protocols," Chen replied calmly. "Surely a civilized empire such as yours understands the importance of procedure." The admiral considered this. 3 days meant nothing in the grand scheme of conquest. Some species had begged for months before finally surrendering. Let these humans have their illusion of consideration. "You have 72 hours, he said. "My fleet will maintain position here. Do not test our patience, understood." "Thank you, Admiral." The transmission ended. Kexatheta turned to his bridge crew, who were making the Zalathi equivalent of laughter, a rattling sound in their throats. "They thanked us for allowing them time to accept their doom," Velnor said. "These humans are even weaker than the Polari. At least they fought for a few hours." "Set up a perimeter around their border systems," Kexatheta ordered. "I want scouts monitoring all their communications. Let's see how they panic." But the reports that came back were strange. The humans weren't panicking. Their civilian channels continued normal broadcasting. Their merchant ships maintained regular routes. Their military vessels had pulled back to their colonies, but there were no mass evacuations, no riots, no collapse of order. "They're in denial," Velnor suggested. "They don't understand what's coming." Kexatheta studied the tactical display. The human colonies were spread across their territory in a rough sphere. Each world had defense stations, but they were small, primitive things. A single dreadnought could destroy them all within hours. What about their homeworld? He asked. Earth, they call it, the intelligence officer replied. Located here. A blue world appeared on the display. Population of 12 billion. Their primary shipyards are in orbit, along with their military command structure. So predictable. Kexatheta mused. Every species puts their strength around their birth world. When Earth falls, the rest will surrender quickly. He retired to his quarters, leaving standard orders for the watch. The conquest of humanity would be another simple entry in the Empire's records. Perhaps they would prove useful as laborers. They seemed to have some basic engineering skills, judging by their functional, if ugly, ships. The next day brought more strange reports. The humans were moving their ships, but not into defensive formations. They were spreading them out, sending single vessels to seemingly random points in space. Their merchant fleet had stopped moving entirely, staying docked at their stations. Are they evacuating their leadership? Felnor asked during the morning briefing. Negative, the intelligence officer said. All government officials remain at their posts. These ship movements appear to be random. Kexatheta felt the first stirring of unease. Random actions meant panic usually. But the humans' communication showed no panic. Their military channels were busy but encrypted. Their civilian networks continued discussing something called football and arguing about entertainment programs. On the second day, a single human ship approached the fleet. It was even smaller than the others, barely 50 meters long. A shuttle, essentially. Admiral, they're requesting permission to board, communications reported. They say they have an ambassador. An ambassador? Kextheta's 4 eyes narrowed. They wish to negotiate? There is nothing to negotiate. Should we destroy them, sir? The Admiral considered. Sometimes seeing the might of the Empire up close helped species accept their fate faster. No, let them board. Have security meet them in Hangar Bay 7. The human ambassador was even less impressive in person. An older human male, gray fur on his head, walking slowly with a cane. He wore a simple black suit. No armor, no weapons. He barely came up to Kexatheta's chest. Admiral, the human said, inclining his head slightly. I'm Ambassador David Park. Thank you for receiving me. You have wasted a trip, Ambassador Park, Kextheta said. Our terms are not negotiable. Surrender or annihilation. There is no third option. The human smiled. It was a strange expression, showing their blunt teeth. I understand. However, we'd like to propose something unusual. Speak. We've been reviewing your history, Admiral. The Zalathi Empire values strength, yes? You conquer through superior force, obviously. Then we propose a demonstration. A test of compatibility, you might say. One of our ships against one of yours. This will help us understand what we're truly facing. Kextheta's scales rippled with amusement. You wish to fight? One ship against a dreadnought? If you're willing. Consider it entertainment. Surely your crew would enjoy a brief diversion. The Admiral looked at Velnor, who was making that rattling laugh again. One human ship against a dreadnought? It would be destroyed in seconds. But it might be amusing, and it would demonstrate to these humans how futile resistance was. Very well, Kextheta said. Choose your ship. Choose your time. We will accommodate this demonstration. Tomorrow, then, noon Earth Standard Time. Our frigate Tenacious will meet your chosen vessel. The human left after that, walking slowly back to his shuttle. Kexatheta watched him go, wondering at the strangeness of these creatures. They were about to witness the destruction of one of their ships, yet this ambassador had seemed almost pleased. Prepare the devastating truth for tomorrow's demonstration, he ordered. Half power on weapons should be more than sufficient. That night, as Kexatheta reviewed the tactical data one more time, a junior officer brought him an unusual report. Sir, we've detected strange energy readings from several human colonies. What kind of readings? Unknown, sir. But they're consistent across all their worlds. Almost like they're preparing something, Kextheta dismissed it. What could they possibly prepare that would matter against the might of the Empire? Tomorrow would show these humans the truth of their situation. After their ship was destroyed, surely they would see the wisdom in surrender. It was always the same. A show of force, then submission. The Empire would grow by 23 systems, and the humans would learn to serve. The bridge of the devastating truth was crowded with officers from across the fleet. Word of the demonstration had spread. and everyone wanted to witness what they assumed would be a quick, amusing destruction. Betting pools had formed on how many seconds the human ship would last. 10 seconds, one Morvac officer said, his chittering voice full of confidence. 5, countered a Threnody navigator. Their ships have no shields. 1 plasma burst will core them. Captain Rexmar, commanding the devastating truth, sat in his command chair with barely concealed excitement. It had been 3 years since his ship had seen real combat. Even a one-sided slaughter would break the monotony. The human ship appeared on sensors exactly at noon Earth time. The UCS Tenacious was 200 meters of angular metal, painted dark gray with white markings. It looked like someone had welded rectangular boxes together and attached engines. No graceful curves, no aesthetic consideration. Pure function. They're hailing us, the communications officer announced. Captain Rexmar gestured for the channel to open. A human female appeared on screen, young with short dark hair and calm brown eyes. This is Commander Lisa Wong of the Tenacious. We're ready to begin when you are. Your bravery is noted, Commander, Rexmar said. It will be remembered when your species serves the Empire. The human smiled. We'll see. Shall we establish the engagement zone? We suggest a sphere 50,000 kilometers diameter. Acceptable. You may take whatever starting position you wish. The Tenacious moved to the far edge of the designated space. Rexmar watched with amusement as the small ship oriented itself. The human vessel was 1/10 the size of his dreadnought. Its weapons were primitive projectiles and simple nuclear warheads. This would be over in moments. Begin, Rexmar commanded. The devastating Truth's plasma cannons swiveled toward the human ship. The targeting computers locked on instantly. At this range, missing was impossible. Fire. Brilliant streams of superheated plasma crossed the void. The Tenacious rolled, barely avoiding the first barrage. Rexmar was mildly impressed. Their pilots had good reflexes. The human ship responded by launching what appeared to be missiles. The tactical display showed 12 projectiles approaching at high speed. Nuclear warheads, according to the sensors. How quaint. Let them hit, Rexmar ordered. Let them see how useless their weapons are. The nuclear missiles struck the devastating Truth's energy shields. Brilliant flashes lit up space as each warhead detonated. The shields held easily, barely dropping 2% in strength. Return fire. Full spread. This time the Tenacious couldn't dodge everything. 2 plasma bursts struck its hull, tearing massive gouges in the metal. Atmosphere vented from the breaches. The human ship was dying, but it kept coming, straight toward the dreadnought. They're accelerating, the tactical officer reported, confusion in his voice. They're on a collision course. Rexmar laughed. They think to ram us? Our shields could withstand 100 such impacts. The Tenacious continued its approach, engines burning at maximum. More plasma fire struck it, tearing away entire sections. It was barely holding together, a dying metal hulk trailing debris. Then something strange appeared on the sensors. Captain, I'm reading a massive energy spike from the human ship. Their reactor is... Sir, they're deliberately overloading their reactor core. Rexmar felt the first touch of concern. How large an explosion? Unknown, sir, but they've removed all safety protocols. The magnetic containment is failing. They're turning their ship into a bomb. All power to forward shields. Back us away. But the Tenacious was too close now, its velocity too high. The human ship slammed into the devastating Truth's shields just as its reactor went critical. The explosion was unlike anything Rexmar had ever seen. Not just the reactor, but something else. The humans had packed their ship with antimatter charges, hiding them from sensors until the last moment. The combined detonation was equivalent to a small star going nova. The devastating Truth shields held, but barely. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. Every sensor array on the forward hull was fried. The shield generators were running at 20% capacity. Half the weapon systems were offline. Damage report. Rexmar shouted over the alarms. Shields failing. Hull breaches on decks 12 through 15. We've lost 40% of our sensors. Weapons are... He was cut off by another alarm. 3 more human ships were approaching from different vectors. Sir, they're on collision courses. All 3 of them. Rexmar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. Evasive maneuvers. Alert the fleet! But across the perimeter of human space, the same scene was playing out. Single human ships, small and primitive, were ramming into Zalathi dreadnoughts. Each impact was a suicide run. Each human crew choosing death to damage their enemies. Admiral Kexatheta watched the tactical display in growing disbelief. In 1 hour, 7 of his 12 dreadnoughts had taken significant damage. The humans weren't trying to win, they were trying to wound. Pull the fleet back, he ordered. Regroup at these coordinates. As the Zalathi ships retreated, a message came through from the humans. Ambassador Park appeared on the screen, the same calm expression on his face. Admiral, I hope this demonstration has been educational. You've now lost 7% of your fleet's combat effectiveness. We have 800 more ships ready to make similar runs. You're insane, Kexatheta said. Your crews are killing themselves for nothing. You cannot win this way. Win? Park tilted his head. Admiral, you misunderstand. We're not trying to win. We're establishing the cost of your victory. The ambassador gestured to someone off-screen. New data appeared on the Zalathi displays. Complete scans of human colonies, defense stations, and ships. All of them had the same feature. Antimatter charges built into their cores. Every human ship is a weapon, Admiral. Every station is a bomb. Every colony is rigged for total destruction. You can conquer us, yes, but we'll take half your fleet with us, maybe more. Velnor leaned close to Kexatheta. They're bluffing. They must be. But the sensor data didn't lie. The quantum signatures were clear. The humans had turned their entire civilization into a weapon. This is madness, Kexatheta said. You would destroy yourselves rather than serve? Park's expression hardened. We have a saying, Admiral. Give me liberty or give me death. It's not a metaphor. The transmission ended. Kexatheta stared at the tactical display, trying to process what he was seeing. In 40 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Species fought, yes. They resisted. But they always chose survival in the end, sir. The intelligence officer spoke up. We're intercepting human communications. They're celebrating. Celebrating? They just lost 4 ships and all crews. Yes, sir. They're calling them heroes. They're already building monuments to the dead crews. Their news networks are showing the families of the dead, and they're proud. Kexatheta pulled up the intercepts. The human broadcasts were surreal. The families of the suicide crews weren't mourning. They were standing tall, speaking of honor and sacrifice. Children were being told their parents were heroes who died for freedom. They worship death, Velnor said, his scales pale with shock. No, Kexatheta corrected, studying the data. They worship sacrifice. They've made martyrdom into a weapon. More reports came in. Human factories were running at maximum capacity, not building defensive systems or shields, but more ships. Simple, expendable ships designed for nothing but ramming runs. They were producing 3 new vessels for every one lost. Sir, we're receiving a priority message from High Command. Kexatheta opened the channel. General Nexvar appeared, the supreme military commander of the Empire. Admiral explained these reports. You've taken damage from a primitive species? General, the humans are unconventional. They're using suicide tactics on a scale we've never seen. Then bombard their worlds from distance. Reduce them to glass. Sir, they've rigged their colonies with antimatter charges. If we destroy them from orbit, the explosions could damage our ships. We'd have to pull back to extreme range, reducing our accuracy. It would take weeks to destroy each world safely. The general's 4 eyes narrowed. Are you telling me these primitives have found a way to make conquest costly? Not just costly, sir. They're ensuring mutual destruction. They cannot defeat us, but they can make victory meaningless. There was a long pause. In the background, Kexatheta could hear other voices. High Command was discussing this unprecedented situation. Continue to hold position, Nexvar finally said. Do not engage further until we've analyzed this. The Emperor must be informed. The channel closed. Kexatheta looked at his damaged fleet. 7 dreadnoughts wounded in 1 hour by a species that shouldn't have been able to scratch their shields. Sir, the sensor officer called out. The humans are moving ships again. Sir, they're forming a wall. The tactical display updated. Hundreds of human vessels were creating a barrier along their border. Not a defensive formation, but a wall of potential bombs. Any push-through would cost dozens of Zalathi ships. They're insane, Velnor said again. No, Kexatheta replied quietly. There's something far more dangerous. They're willing. He thought about the human commander who had flown her ship into the devastating truth. She hadn't hesitated, hadn't tried to escape at the last moment. The morning of the 3rd day brought an unexpected delivery to Admiral Kexatheta's dreadnought. A small human courier drone, unarmed and broadcasting peaceful intentions, requested permission to dock. It carried a data package of enormous size. "It's not a weapon," the security chief confirmed after extensive scans. "Just data storage. Massive amounts of it." "What kind of data?" Kextheta asked. "Historical records, sir. Military history, specifically. Thousands of years' worth." The Admiral's 4 eyes narrowed. "Put it through isolation protocols. Then analyze it." What they found changed everything. The package contained humanity's complete military history. Every war, every battle, every conflict from their Stone Age to their Space Age. Velnor and the intelligence team began reviewing it. Expecting to find typical conquest and expansion records, they found something else entirely. "Sir, you need to see this," Velnor said, his voice unusually subdued. The bridge's main display showed an ancient human battle. A place called Thermopylae, 300 warriors holding a narrow pass against an army of millions. They knew they would die. They held anyway. "They all died?" Kextheta asked. "Every one of them. They knew they would. They went anyway." The next file showed a city called Stalingrad. Humans fighting in frozen ruins, eating rats and bark to survive. Soldiers with no ammunition fighting with shovels and bare hands. 1 million dead to hold one city. They won this battle, Velnor noted, by refusing to stop fighting even when logic said they should surrender. Jerusalem, Masada, the Alamo, Rorke's Drift, Bastogne. Each story was the same pattern. Humans surrounded, outnumbered, outgunned, choosing death over surrender, and sometimes impossibly winning through sheer refusal to quit. But it wasn't just the military records. The humans had included their cultural stories. Their myths and legends all celebrated the same concept: heroes who died for principles, gods who sacrificed themselves for their people. They had a religious figure who was tortured to death, and they wore his execution device as jewelry. "They worship suffering," the chief analyst said, his scales pale. "Their entire culture is built on the nobility of dying for a cause." "There's more, sir," another analyst added. "Look at their military doctrines from their atomic age." The screen displayed something called MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction. For decades, humans had pointed weapons at each other that could end their entire species, and the threat had worked because everyone knew humans would actually do it. "They held themselves hostage," Kextheta said slowly. "They prevented war by promising to destroy everything if anyone started one." "It gets worse, Admiral." Velnor pulled up new data. Their colonial war records. When they fought for independence, they would burn their own cities rather than let enemies have them. They would destroy their own resources to deny them to opponents. The Russians' scorched earth campaigns. The Chinese destroying their own dams to flood invading armies. Americans burning Atlanta during their Civil War. Vietnamese burning their own villages. Again and again, humans choosing destruction over defeat. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "the humans are ready to give their formal response." Ambassador Park appeared on the screen again. This time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood representatives from every human colony. Military officers, civilian leaders, even what appeared to be religious figures. "Admiral Kextheta," Park began, "we've shown you our history. Now let us show you our present." The screen split into multiple views. Human shipyards were working without pause, producing vessel after vessel. But these weren't military ships. They were simple cylinders with engines. "Flying bombs, we call it the Samson Protocol," Park explained, from one of our religious stories. A warrior who was captured and blinded pulled down a temple on his enemies, killing himself and thousands of them. The display showed human colonies. Every city, every station, every outpost had the same modifications. Antimatter charges in the infrastructure. Fusion bombs in the foundations. Everything rigged to detonate. "Every human over the age of 16 has been given a choice," Park continued. "Evacuate to the inner worlds or stay and fight." 80% chose to stay. Kextheta couldn't hide his shock. 80% of your population chose death over surrender? "Not death, Admiral, defiance. There's a difference." Park gestured and new data appeared. "Economic projections, industrial output, population statistics. We've run the simulations, Admiral. You can defeat us. Your technology is superior. Your fleet is larger, but here's what it will cost you." The numbers were staggering. To safely conquer human space would require the Empire to approach each world carefully, taking weeks per planet to avoid the antimatter traps. Meanwhile, humans would continue their suicide runs, each one damaging more ships. Conservative estimates suggest you'll lose 40% of your fleet, maybe 60% if we get creative. And for what? Dead worlds drained of resources? A handful of survivors who will never stop fighting? You're forgetting, Kex Theta said. We could simply quarantine you, build a barrier around human space, let you rot in isolation. Park smiled sadly. We thought of that. Show him Operation Exodus. The display changed to show hundreds of small vessels, each barely large enough for a single person. They were fitted with FTL drives and aimed at Zalathi worlds. One human, one ship, one antimatter bomb, Park explained. We can build 10,000 of these for the cost of one warship. They'll jump into your populated systems and detonate. Can you stop them all? Can you protect every one of your worlds forever? The bridge was silent. The implications were clear. Humans weren't just willing to die fighting. They were prepared to turn themselves into living weapons, spreading destruction across the Empire. This is monstrous, Velnor said. This is human, Park replied. We didn't evolve as the strongest or fastest on our world. We survived by being the most stubborn. We're persistence predators, Admiral. We don't stop, ever. Park leaned forward, his elderly face serious. But here's what you need to understand. We don't want this fight. We take no joy in the prospect of mutual annihilation. If you leave, we'll disarm the Samson Protocol. We'll go back to our normal lives. We'll even trade with you, share technology, be peaceful neighbors. Or, Kexatheta asked, or we'll make sure that conquering humanity is the last mistake the Zalathi Empire ever makes. Not because we'll win, but because we'll make victory indistinguishable from defeat. The transmission continued with more details. The humans had studied every Zalathi conquest. They knew the Empire's standard tactics, their supply lines, their population centers. They had planned not for victory, but for maximum mutual destruction. You've conquered 47 species, Park said. But let me ask you something, Admiral. How many of those species had nuclear weapons when you found them? None, Kex Theta admitted. How many had been to space? 3. How many had spent their entire evolutionary history killing each other with increasingly creative methods? The Admiral didn't answer. We're not like your other conquests, Park continued. We didn't develop space travel to explore or expand. We developed it because we'd run out of room to test bigger bombs on our planet. Our first spacecraft were modified intercontinental ballistic missiles. We went to our moon not for science, but to prove we could hit any target on Earth. Park stood up, and the other human representatives stood with him. We've given you our answer, Admiral. We choose freedom or death, not as a threat, but as a simple statement of fact. The choice of which it will be is yours. The transmission ended. The bridge remained silent for a long moment. Sir, the intelligence officer finally spoke. I've been analyzing their psychological profiles. They're not bluffing. Every historical example shows the same pattern. Humans become more dangerous the more desperate their situation becomes. More dangerous? Velnor asked. They're already threatening mutual annihilation? That's just the beginning, sir. Their history shows that when truly cornered, humans abandon all restraint. They've used biological weapons, chemical weapons, targeted civilians, burned entire continents. They have a concept called total war, where every resource, every person, every moral restriction is abandoned in pursuit of victory. Kex Theta pulled up the historical files again. The bombing of Dresden, Hiroshima, the Mongol conquests, the Crusades. When humans felt their existence was threatened, they became something beyond rational. They're insane, Velnor said for the third time. No, Kexatheta corrected again. They're human, and I'm beginning to understand what that means. He thought about the Empire's conquests. Every species they had faced wanted to survive above all else. That made them predictable, controllable. Eventually, every species chose life as servants over death as free beings. But humans had evolved differently. They had spent millions of years in a constant state of warfare with nature and each other. They had turned cooperation in the face of death into their primary survival trait. They didn't just accept death as a possibility. They had built their entire civilization on the principle that some things were worth dying for. Sir, we're receiving priority orders from High Command. General Nexvar appeared on the screen again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him was the Emperor's personal advisor. Admiral, the Emperor has reviewed your reports and the human data. He has questions. The Imperial Palace on Zeleth Prime was a structure that had stood for 3,000 years. Its black stone walls had witnessed the rise of the Empire from a single planet to the dominant force in the galaxy. In the throne room, Emperor Zarkon the Eternal sat in contemplation, his ancient eyes reviewing the data from the human frontier. Around him, the High Council had gathered, the greatest minds of the Empire, representatives from every conquered species that had proven useful enough to earn a voice. They had been debating for 6 hours. The humans are bluffing, insisted War Master Krelvek. No species would truly destroy itself rather than accept the natural order. The data suggests otherwise, countered Science Advisor Yelnan, her feathers rustling with agitation. Their entire history is one of choosing death over subjugation. They've done it repeatedly. The Emperor raised one clawed hand and silence fell immediately. At 800 years old, Zarkon had overseen the conquest of 30 species personally. He had never encountered anything like this. Show me the economic projections again, he commanded. The holographic display materialized in the center of the room. The numbers were clear and damning. Conquering humanity would cost between 40 and 60% of an invasion fleet. But that was just the beginning. If we factor in occupation forces, the economics minister explained, we would need to maintain a permanent garrison of at least 50 warships in human space. Their surviving population would never stop resisting. The drain on resources would be constant. And the Samson Protocol? The Emperor asked. Our analysts believe they would activate it. Every human colony would self-destruct rather than be taken. We would inherit dead worlds that would take centuries to rehabilitate. What about their threat to target our worlds? The intelligence chief stepped forward. We've run simulations, Your Majesty. If even 1% of their single-pilot suicide ships reached our populated systems, we could lose millions of citizens. Our defense networks weren't designed to stop thousands of individual FTL-capable bombs. The Emperor turned his gaze to the military high command representative, who had just arrived from the frontier. Admiral Nexvar himself had come to deliver his assessment in person. Admiral, you've reviewed all the data. Give me your honest opinion. Nexvar's scales shifted to a color of deep uncertainty. Your Majesty, in conventional terms, we would win. We have superior technology, larger fleets, better logistics. But the humans have changed the definition of victory. Explain. They're not trying to win, Your Majesty. They're trying to make victory meaningless. They've studied our history, our methods. They know we conquer to gain resources, populations, technology. They're ensuring we would gain none of those things. The Emperor's 4 eyes narrowed. Continue. Furthermore, they've shared their defense doctrine with their allied species. The Centauri Republic and the Martian Collective have both announced they're adopting similar protocols. If we attack humanity, we might trigger a wave of species adopting suicide defense strategies. The room fell silent at this. The Empire's entire expansion model was based on the assumption that species would eventually choose survival over destruction. If that assumption failed, if species began choosing mutual annihilation over conquest, the Empire's growth would stop. There's another factor, Your Majesty, the Cultural Analysis Director added. The human concept of martyrdom is spreading through information networks. Other species are beginning to discuss whether existence under the Empire is truly preferable to death. This is a dangerous idea. The Emperor stood, his massive form towering over the council. He walked to the window overlooking the capital city. Billions of citizens from dozens of species lived in harmony under imperial rule. The Empire had brought order to chaos, peace to warfare, purpose to existence. But it worked because species surrendered. They accepted the natural order of the strong ruling the weak. Humans were proposing something different, that the weak could make themselves too expensive to rule. Tell me about their society, the Emperor commanded. These humans who choose death so readily, the cultural director pulled up new files. Images of Earth and human colonies filled the display. They're chaotic, Your Majesty. They have hundreds of different governments, thousands of cultures, millions of competing ideologies. They argue about everything. Their information networks are filled with debates, disagreements, conflicts. Yet they unite against us? That's the paradox, Your Majesty. Humans fight each other constantly, until faced with an external threat. Then they become a single organism with one purpose, resistance. They have a saying, I against my brother and I against our cousin, our family against the neighborhood, our neighborhood against the city, our city against the world. The Emperor studied the images. Human cities were messy, unplanned, growing organically rather than by design. Their art was chaotic, their music discordant, their literature filled with conflict and struggle. They thrive on conflict, he mused. They've made it part of their identity. Yes, Your Majesty. Our psychologists believe that's why they're willing to die rather than surrender. To them, struggle itself has value. They would rather die fighting than live in peace under our rule. Finance Minister Kextal cleared his throat. Your Majesty, there's another consideration. The economic cost of this conflict. New projections appeared. The cost of conquering and occupying human space would consume the Empire's military budget for 50 years. The resources gained from dead worlds wouldn't offset the expense for centuries. We could conquer 3 other species for the cost of subduing humanity, Kextal explained. Species that would surrender, integrate, and contribute to the Empire. You're suggesting we abandon the conquest? War Master Krelvek asked, his tone shocked. I'm suggesting we consider the cost-benefit ratio, Kextal replied. The Empire has always been pragmatic. Is pride worth bankrupting ourselves? The debate resumed, voices raised in argument. Some council members insisted the Empire's reputation demanded conquest. Others argued for a strategic withdrawal. Still others proposed alternative solutions, biological weapons, planet-destroying weapons, methods to break the human will. The Emperor listened to it all, processing the information with centuries of experience. Finally, he raised his hand again. Admiral Nexvar, I have a hypothetical question. If we withdrew from human space, marked them as a non-interference zone, what would be the likely outcome? Nexvar considered carefully. Based on their history, Your Majesty, they would likely return to their normal activities. They might even seek trade relationships with our border systems. Humans seem to separate conflict from commerce with surprising ease. And if another species attempted to conquer them, they would activate the same protocols. The Samson Protocol isn't specific to us. It's their response to any existential threat. The Emperor returned to his throne, his ancient form settling into the stone carved specifically for his body. He had ruled for 8 centuries. In that time, he had made thousands of decisions affecting trillions of lives. But this was unique. Computer, he commanded, display the Empire's expansion over the last 1,000 years. A map appeared showing the Empire's growth. From a single system to nearly 1/3 of the galaxy, each conquered species added as a different color, showing the steady consumption of independent civilizations. Now show the projection if we maintain current expansion rates. The map evolved, showing the Empire consuming more and more of the galaxy. In 500 years, at current rates, they would control everything. Now factor in the human model. Assume 1 in 10 species adopts their defense doctrine. The map changed dramatically. Expansion slowed, then stopped. The Empire reached a maximum size and could grow no further. The cost of conquest would exceed the benefits. They're not just defending themselves, the Emperor said quietly. They're introducing a new paradigm. They're teaching the galaxy that conquest can be made too expensive to pursue. Surely that's an overstatement, Your Majesty. War Master Krelvek protested. Is it? The information is already spreading. The Rigel Coalition is discussing antimatter integration into their infrastructure. The Vegan Assembly is studying human history for defensive strategies. If we fail to conquer humanity, if we're seen to retreat, how many other species will adopt their methods? The Council exchanged uncertain glances. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just resisting conquest. They were potentially ending the age of galactic empires. Your Majesty, the philosophy advisor spoke for the first time. Perhaps we're viewing this wrong. The humans have proven themselves strong in their own way. In nature, when 2 apex predators meet, they often avoid each other rather than fight to mutual destruction. You're suggesting we treat them as equals? The War Master's voice was horrified. I'm suggesting we treat them as what they are, too dangerous to consume. The Empire has always been pragmatic. Is it not pragmatic to recognize when a fruit is too poisonous to eat? The Emperor contemplated this. In 1,000 years of expansion, the Empire had never encountered a species it couldn't conquer, but they had also never encountered a species that had weaponized mutual destruction on this scale. There's one more piece of data, Your Majesty, Admiral Nexvar said. The human response time. What about it? Admiral Kextheta stood on the bridge of his flagship, reading the orders from the Emperor for the 3rd time. In 40 years of military service, he had never received commands like these. Withdraw, classify, do not engage. The Empire was walking away from a conquest. Sir, Velnor said quietly, the fleet is ready to depart on your command. Kextheta looked at the tactical display one last time. The human ships still maintained their wall formation along the border. 800 vessels, each one a potential bomb. Behind them, the colonies continued their normal activities, as if the most powerful military force in the galaxy hadn't been threatening them for the past 3 days. "Open a channel to the humans," Kexatheta commanded. Ambassador Park appeared on the screen. Looking tired but alert, behind him the human military commanders stood ready. "Admiral," Park said with a slight nod. "Ambassador, I am commanded by His Majesty Emperor Zarkon the Eternal to inform you that the Zalathi Empire is withdrawing from human space. Your territory will be marked as a non-interference zone. No Imperial vessel will enter your borders." Park's expression didn't change, but Kexatheta noticed the slight relaxation in his shoulders. The humans had been prepared to die, but they were relieved they wouldn't have to. "We acknowledge your decision, Admiral. Please convey to your Emperor that humanity holds no ill will toward the Zalathi Empire. We seek only to be left in peace." "There is one more thing," Kexatheta said. "A warning is being added to all stellar charts. Your species is being classified with a unique designation." "Which is?" Kexatheta hesitated, then spoke the words that would echo through the galaxy. "Do not engage. Species employs mutual destruction doctrine. Victory probability 100%. Victory value 0%. For the first time, Park smiled. "That's fair. We have a similar note about your empire. Powerful but pragmatic. Do not provoke unless prepared for total war." "You were studying us even as we threatened you?" "Admiral, we study everyone. It's how we survive. We can't match your technology, so we have to understand your psychology. Your empire expands through cost-benefit analysis. We simply change the equation." Kexatheta found himself respecting these strange, suicidal creatures. "Tell me, Ambassador, would you really have done it?" "Destroyed everything?" Park's smile faded. "Admiral, 300 years ago we nearly destroyed our entire planet in a conflict over political ideology. We built enough nuclear weapons to kill every living thing on Earth 20 times over, and we came within minutes of using them. Multiple times," he paused, letting that sink in. "So yes, Admiral, we would have done it. We would have hated it, mourned it, built monuments to the dead for 1,000 years, but we would have done it. Because some things are worth more than survival. What could possibly be worth more than survival? The right to choose our own path. The freedom to be wrong, to argue, to grow in our own chaotic way. Under your empire we would have peace, order, purpose, but we wouldn't be human anymore." Kexatheta considered this. The empire offered stability, prosperity, unity. Most species eventually saw the benefits. But humans valued their chaos, their conflicts, their freedom to fail. "Your species is insane," he said finally. "By your standards, yes," Park agreed. "By ours, we're free." The transmission ended. Kexatheta turned to his crew. "Take us out of human space. Best speed to the border." As the Zalathi fleet departed, they passed the human defense line. The human ships held position, weapons powered down but ready. They would remain there for weeks until they were certain the threat had passed. The withdrawal took 6 hours. As they crossed the border, Kexatheta ordered a final sensor sweep of human space. The colonies were already beginning to stand down from military alert. The suicide ships were returning to their hangars. The antimatter charges were being put back into safety mode. "They're returning to normal already," Velnor observed, as if nothing happened. "To them this was normal," Kexatheta replied. "They've been preparing for this moment for decades." As the fleet assembled at the rendezvous point, messages began arriving from other Imperial forces. Word of the withdrawal was spreading through the Empire's military networks. Some expressed shock, others curiosity. Many wanted to know what could possibly cause the Empire to abandon a conquest. Kexatheta prepared his report carefully. He included everything: the suicide tactics, the Samson Protocol, the human history files. But most importantly, he included his analysis of human psychology. "Humanity represents a paradigm shift in galactic warfare," he wrote. "They have weaponized the concept of Pyrrhic victory. They cannot defeat superior forces, but they can make victory worthless. This doctrine could spread to other species. The age of easy conquest may be ending." He sent the report to High Command, then retired to his quarters. On his personal display, he pulled up the human historical files they had transmitted. One story in particular caught his attention. It was about something called the Cold War. For 50 years, humans had pointed weapons at each other that could end their civilization. Neither side could win, so neither side fought. They had turned mutual annihilation into a form of peace. Now they had done the same thing to the Empire. A message arrived from Earth, not from the government or military, but from what appeared to be a university. The message was simple. Thank you for choosing peace. If your scholars ever wished to study human history and culture, they would be welcome. Kexatheta stared at the message. Even after threatening them with annihilation, the humans were offering to share knowledge. They separated conflict from learning with an ease that baffled him. 3 months later, the first report came in from the Krell hegemony. They had ignored the warnings about humanity, seeing the Empire's withdrawal as weakness. A fleet of 30 warships had entered human space. None returned. The only message from humanity was a broadcast on all frequencies. We warned you. We asked for peace. You chose war. Now face the consequences. The Krell hegemony lost 30% of their fleet and gained nothing. The few sensor logs that survived showed human colonies detonating as Krell forces approached, taking dozens of ships with them. Human suicide vessels ramming into command ships. Entire battle groups destroyed by individual humans in tiny ships packed with antimatter. Within a year, 3 more species had attempted to conquer humanity. All failed. The death tolls were staggering. But each time, humanity's response was the same. They didn't pursue. They didn't counterattack. They simply made the cost of conquest unbearable and then returned to their normal lives. The galaxy began to understand. Humans weren't conquerors. They weren't empire builders. They were something far more dangerous. They were immovable. You could destroy them, but you couldn't defeat them. You could kill them, but you couldn't conquer them. The designation spread through every stellar chart. Every navigation database, every military archive. Do not engage. 5 years after the first contact, something unexpected happened. Human merchant ships began appearing at Imperial border stations. They came seeking trade, offering unique goods, cultural exchanges. They were friendly, eager to learn, willing to share. The Empire, confused but curious, allowed limited trade. The humans were excellent merchants, fair in their dealings, honoring all contracts. They showed no fear of the Empire, no resentment over the attempted conquest. They simply acted as if it was history, irrelevant to the present. How do you do it? A Zelathi trader asked a human merchant once. How do you separate war from peace so completely? The human had smiled. We've been practicing for thousands of years. We've learned to hate the war, not the warrior. To oppose the conquest, not the conqueror. Today you're a trading partner. If tomorrow you try to conquer us again, we'll fight. But if the day after you want to trade again, we'll be here. This flexibility, this ability to shift from total war to total peace, unnerved the galaxy more than their suicide tactics. Humans could be your deadliest enemy one day and your friendliest neighbor the next. Admiral Kexatheta, now retired, often studied the human files in his villa overlooking the Crimson Sea of Zelath Prime. He had fought dozens of species. Conquered worlds brought glory to the Empire. But humanity had taught him something new. Sometimes, the greatest strength was knowing when not to fight. He received occasional messages from human scholars, sharing new historical discoveries, asking questions about Zelathi military history. They were always respectful, always curious, always learning. One day, a message arrived from Ambassador Park, now also retired. Admiral, I wanted you to know that your decision to withdraw saved millions of lives on both sides. In our history, we call that wisdom. Thank you for being wise. Kexatheta replied simply. Thank you for teaching us that some victories aren't worth winning. The galaxy had learned humanity's lesson. They were the species that had weaponized mutual destruction, turned martyrdom into military doctrine, made conquest too expensive to pursue. They were the immovable object that broke the unstoppable force, and so humanity's place in the galaxy was secured, not through conquest or empire, but through the simple, terrifying promise that they would rather die free than live as slaves. The warning spread to every corner of known space, translated into 1,000 languages, programmed into every navigation system. Human space. Do not engage. They cannot be conquered, only destroyed.